Good morning and welcome to the community update for Friday, May 7th. Today is Baldwin Invitational Day, and so across this region, probably one of the largest track events in western Pennsylvania. Actually, I believe it's even in the eastern part of the United States, one of the largest track events, the Baldwin Invitational. A little bit different this year because of the pandemic. The boys' events are scheduled for today. The girls' events are scheduled for tomorrow, so I'm not sure it's the first time we've ever done the event across 2 days, but it is being scheduled that way this year. So just as a reminder, this came a little bit later in my updates, but just as a reminder, you probably know it by now, but Baldwin High School is operating on a remote schedule today. I did announce that last week, but Baldwin High School is a remote schedule today. All of our other buildings are in person, and that is just for today, related to the Invitational and just trying to free up space in that environment. Some shout outs, accolades, and announcements for this week. First, really have to start with Mother's Day for Sunday, 2021, to all the moms out there. Thank you. Really the glue that holds all of our families together. And I really appreciate my mom, my stepmom, of course, my wife, and a mother to Carly and Jenna, and just all the moms that have really done just such different work this year. The work of moms is always so powerful, but this year, being the teacher, you hear some of the commercials out there about being the teacher and taking on totally different roles at home. Because kids are home so much more. And so congratulations. Hope you have a wonderful day. It looks like the weather's not going to be so great, but hope everyone has a really great Mother's Day weekend. Teacher Appreciation and Staff Appreciation Week. Today actually concludes the official week for Teacher and Staff Appreciation. So kind of in the same vein, what a different year that we've had. I think the appreciation of teachers' work and educational staff work is just such at a different level this year than what we may have known in the past or realized in the past, because basically with remote learning, the privacy of a classroom, so to speak, has really been opened up, and whether children at home or just home on a particular day, remote learning has really allowed or forced all of us to really get our view back into that classroom, even on a daily basis. So congratulations and thank you to all the teachers and staff. The Baldwin Whitehall Educational Foundation has really expanded this celebration or this appreciation to the entire month of May. Some of the events that we had organized with the foundation have not been able to be pulled off this year, and they had been doing fundraising and a variety of different collections for prizes for some of these events, and so they really felt to rededicate those things and give those to the staff. And so on a daily basis, they're doing raffles or drawings to give items of appreciation to teachers and staff across the district. So thank you to Eric and the team at the foundation, really to up the game, so to speak, for the recognition of teachers and staff. A couple stories. Let me find my notes here. A couple stories and shout outs. The first one, I'm calling it Lost in Baldwin. The writer did not want to be identified by name, so I've called it Lost in Baldwin. Was it like Sleepless in Seattle? Probably not. But this person wanted to share really a story from this past week. This person's daughter is a full remote student. So we really talked about this and just the transitions and things we don't really think about. But a full remote student since the beginning of the year, went into the school on the very first time to take the PSSA test. She was given an incorrect room number twice. Sorry about that. But an incorrect room number twice before finding the room that she was actually supposed to be testing in on that particular day. Needless to say, the child was a bit scared, although she's resilient and adventurous, trying to find her way around that big school she's never set foot in before. But she found a girl walking in the hall and asked for help. This kind girl, who she believes was a high schooler, went out of her way, because actually this child is 7th grade, I think I said that, went out of her way as she headed to her math class to help my child find her way. I would really like to acknowledge how much appreciated that act of kindness happens to be, as it warmed my heart as a parent. Unfortunately, we don't know her name, but it was before 9 a.m. and she was heading off to her math class. A brief description: she thinks it's a high school student. Pink hair that was sat on her shoulders. It's possible to somehow recognize her for her random act of kindness. And it may seem like a very small thing, but for that particular child on that particular day, and of course for this mom on that particular day, really made just a huge difference. There was a PS on there. Day 2 was a breeze. That's good news. But again, random acts of kindness do go a long way. We, as a society, I think, and I've said this to some folks last week when they called in about a couple things. You know what? We always have time to complain, but do we often take time to praise or say thank you? And I know we're all busy, and these folks had called in last week to thank the district about something, and it was very heartfelt. The second one I'm calling basically at Harrison Education Center. A grandma had reached out to me, and paraphrase a little bit because the email is a bit long, but I think it's a really great story. Her grandchildren attend or are members of the school district. The mom has really been working hard on the virtual learning with them. However, due to the state regs with PSSA, the one grandchild is attending Harrison this week and part of next for the testing. So the email goes on to talk about how the staff has done a phenomenal job at getting these private transportation, the parents dropping kids off, the private transportation children on and off campus in a hassle-free, expedient manner. Monday proved to be a bit crazy with PSSA pickups coinciding with kindergarten pickups. Staff went to work that afternoon, developed a plan, sent out an email adjusting both drop-off and pickup to make the process so much easier. Mr. Foote directs the cars effortlessly to allow for easy flow of traffic, all while ensuring the safety of the students. I'm certain that he did not work for his principal certificate to direct traffic. I don't think we have courses on that when we work through our coursework. Yet he did it willingly as a job needed to be done. His staff really coordinated the student dismissal via walkie-talkies, again ensuring students' ease of departure. She goes on to really praise Mrs. Bugler as the primary teacher, being a gem. She's gone above and beyond countless times. Also, Mr. Myers, Ms. Wolf, who worked hard to ensure that the other child is really engaged, even if it's remotely. And this person comes from experience. She worked 20 years in an alternative education program. So hats off to you. That's a tough program. She's had numerous principals and executive directors, and really talked about the importance of leadership. And so I concur. The leadership at the building level. She talked about leadership at the district level, and I thank you for your comments about that. But her first name is Lisa. Lisa, thank you for the shout out, and thank you for just taking time to say thank you. Okay, a couple other announcements. The Baldwin High School musical concluded this past weekend. Special thanks to all that helped make Once Upon a Mattress really a successful show for this year. Yes, there were obstacles. COVID, there were a couple of shutdowns. There was a closure of the high school and ultimately the musical just a few days before opening afternoon on that Sunday. The kids persevered. The staff persevered. They pushed through, performing a musical with clear face shield / masks on. Not the most desirable, but the kids made it through, and it was a success. So thank you to everyone that really made that happen. Once again, the Baldwin High School ice hockey team picked up 2 championships along the way in the past few weeks. We had the Penguins Cup as well as the Pennsylvania Cup. As part of the protocol, the children had to quarantine for a period of 10 days after they concluded their last game, which would have been the Penguins Cup. So their first day back in the building was just yesterday, and there was an opportunity to say thank you to those young men and congratulate them. They had the opportunity to jump onto the board meeting Wednesday night. Technical difficulties, some of the sound didn't work out so well. However, I had a chance to see them once again yesterday morning. So thank you to all of those young men. Okay, let's kick off the other topics. Pennsylvania changing guidance on COVID-19. So we know the governor came out this past week and well in advance of May 31st, really rolled out some changes that he anticipates that are going to happen. Some of those things in no particular order. Masking is not Masking is not changing. The mask order will be in effect until at least 70% of adults are vaccinated. Given the end of the year being a very short window of time, right after that May 31st date, we do not anticipate any changes in our district procedures related to masking between now and the end of this school year. So while the masking order may be lifted once 70% of adults are vaccinated, we don't anticipate that change really affecting us within the school. If it does, we'll communicate that out, but as of now, it will not. The gathering limits are expected to be lifted on May 31st. But while that sounds wonderful, we had a conversation yesterday with the Allegheny County Health Department, and they're consistent with that. They're looking for the gathering limits to be lifted. But inside of that, there's still some details that are important. We still are required to maintain the physical distancing, with the 6 feet of distance being the recommended distance. So while we don't have artificial or other design limits placed upon any of our spaces, there really still are limits, because if we're holding to 6 feet of distancing, that limits what you can do, like in stands or auditoriums or gymnasiums, things of that nature. Now, granted, spring sports are winding down in the next few weeks. We do have some different academic recognition programs that are gearing up, everything from kindergarten recognition all the way through commencements, and really trying to see how this all plays out. But if 6 feet of distancing with non-family members or those who you don't quarantine with, is that's the language, is still the recommended distance. So we have to respect that. Classroom impact, really no change. There is no change in the classroom impact. So how we're going to finish out the school year, there's no change in course there as well. So unless we're dealing with individuals, children that have really exceptional needs, some high risk types of concerns, where we stand today is the way we're going to finish out for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Been questions around the commencement ceremony. So Baldwin High School commencement is one of the most wonderful commencement ceremonies that I've ever been part of. The pomp and circumstance is fantastic. So we are looking at increased attendance. Prior to this, we were most likely thinking 2 tickets per graduate. We have a meeting later today on this topic, so we can vet this out a little bit further. But if we're able to maintain that 6 feet of distance, and even last year prior to some of these changes, we had marked off the stadium basically with purple dots on all the seats. And really, as long as we can maintain that distancing, we will be able to increase the attendance. And again, more information to come on that. There's a lot of questions continue around proms and other types of events, and why we are not opening up our proms for children and young men and women from other districts or those who have graduated already. I've taken that question to other superintendents and other high school leaders. The results are mixed. There are some that are opening up and saying, go ahead, that's fine, let's let other people come in. There are others that are saying, no, we're just maintaining, just if you're a student of our school, then you're eligible and able to attend that event. That's the stance that we have taken, and we'll continue to take it. But I think it's important that I ask that you have the opportunity to hear why I'm taking that stance. And there's really 2 main reasons. Number one, if there are situations, because we know the activities during those types of events can be more risky than others. The close proximity of the kids, yes, you can talk about distancing, and I've heard the no dancing, but kids are eating. They're sitting at tables, masks off, everyone's eating, and so that is a riskier time. There is opportunity for spread, and we've all talked about super spreader events through the course of this year. Other schools are very concerned that with the other events that they have coming up this year, their own prom, their own graduation, etc., that if something happens in one particular event, a prom, and that comes back to affect their events, is that a risk worth taking? And I understand that. I agree with that. And so if our granted, listen, if there's other proms out there and they have open attendance, so to speak, and any of our kids are going to those proms and coming back potentially with COVID, and spread that within our school district or our senior class, that could run the risk of shutting our event down. So I get what you're saying. I understand the contradictory nature of it, but I can control what I can control. I believe that it's important to really reduce the variables so that way our prom can go off without a hitch. But also even the other things that we have planned. Our graduation ceremony is just a few days after prom, but enough time that if something would occur, that it could run the risk of shutting down our commencements. And that did happen last spring. You may have heard a lot of different commencements. Even when they tried to open them up and tried to get them moving, they kept getting pushed back and ultimately canceled. So that is one of the problems. The other side of it, and it's directly connected to that, is the contact tracing procedures and protocols are not changing. So if there's a positive case, we can increase the attendance. The distancing still required, but once we start getting cases, we have to contact trace. It only goes to bear that if there are more people in events, and when you're contact tracing, you can really end up with more quarantines coming out of those types of processes. So for me, it's really important that the events that we have scheduled for Baldwin Whitehall go off as planned this year, including the prom, including graduation, and risks to those things, to me, just aren't worth it. There's another side of that too, and the governor's talking about, okay, we're planning right now for increased attendance or increased gathering. The limits are going to be lifted, and that's the plan now. And numbers are moving in the right direction. And so we had a conversation about this even at the board level. What happens when, I know you don't want to live in a world of what if, but we take a position, okay, open it up. Anyone can come. But then due to things being complicated, or if the goals are not met, that has to be back off. Those are decisions around prom where there's a lot of money involved. There are dresses, there are services, hair and nails, and all the things that go into prom, tuxedo rentals, cars, or everything. And to plan a certain direction and then have to back that off, or where we might have to back that off or be forced to do something different, to me, just is unacceptable. And so that's not a risk that I am willing to take, nor am I going to place basically our residents and our parents in that position where they're laying out financial resources that they have for something that may not happen, that we might have been able to control. So we may not agree on that, and I respect that. Maybe we can disagree without being disagreeable, but that's where we stand. Moving forward with some different topics. Staffing for 2021-22. While I can't get into all the details of it because the teachers don't have all the details yet, they get that information next week. We do anticipate 14 vacancies for next year, and they would really impact all schools. So there's vacancies in all the school buildings, various certifications. I can share more of this next Friday once this is public information, at least teacher level public information. But it is a good year that there are some folks that have chosen to resign, retire, move on, do something different, as well as we continue to grow. So some of those vacancies are related to just increased enrollment. What we don't know yet are any vacancies or any additional staffing that might be necessary due to remote learning. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a few minutes. We do ask the board and presented a new district level administrative position, coordinator of student engagement. And so the work that we are really looking for that person to engage in, really helping to coordinate and lead counseling services across the district. ESL, we've not had an ESL supervisor or coordinator for probably a decade, and our numbers in ESL continue to grow, so we think that is important. There is a goal to significantly impact the success of children across the district. The application window is currently open, and that'll close on Friday the 21st. Part of that work really grows out of recognition and a grant that the district received. We were awarded an OER grant for racial equity and social justice. It's a project grant via the League of Innovative Schools, which the district has been part of for about 4 years. We were selected from a national platform to engage in collaborative work addressing social and racial equity issues in schools. Work will begin this summer and then move into the 21-22 school year. So that position is really tied into grant work as well as really local work where we know that we want to improve. So the next steps in staffing, I kind of already talked about this a moment. The teacher notice goes out on 5/14 next Friday. They get what's called a tentative assignment letter. At that point, then we will be posting vacancies also that same day. So any advertisements for applications that'll go out. So if you're someone looking for a teaching position and hopefully these certification levels would line up with what you have, please look for that posting and apply. So the goal will be to have as many hiring recommendations to the board for June. We know that never is a perfect science, and so we work throughout the course of the summer to fill out all of those classrooms and positions. As we start talking about next year, we do have our plan in place, a full school year. So right now it's scheduled at 181 days for children, 5 days per week in person. The 6-hour, 45-minute day of school, we want to return back to that. We're still working with transportation because one of the outgrowths of COVID, and we hope we can recover, are how many bus drivers we have, how many drivers we have in the transportation department. Of course, you've seen the bus parked on the front lawn of Baldwin High School with the big banner on it. That bus has moved. It is now on McNeely Road. Thank you to Black Dog Car Wash for allowing us to take part of your parking lot. But we're advertising, we're trying to recruit drivers, but we do not have enough. So this year it worked out, I guess, well, if you want to say it worked out well related to COVID, that some children were staying home, and many parents, thank you, but many parents chose to drive their children to school. That helped. It doesn't help if you're sitting in a line waiting to pick up or drop off your child, but it helped us with our bus loads. That problem is going to continue next year. We don't see a solution in sight for that, and it's not just us. It's transportation departments across the region, across the state, across the country. Everyone's hiring. Everyone needs drivers, and there's just simply not enough. So the goal is still a 6-hour, 45-minute school day, but we do know that just our services really dictate that. What the transportation schedule will turn out to be will have impact on the school day. You may think that sounds kind of backwards, and it probably does. But that's just simply, we've got to be able to get the kids here. We've got to be able to get them home, and we're working on that. So the remote option, we do believe there still needs to be one. As I told you last week, we're working on several options. What that looks like, we're not exactly sure, but we know that, again, the progression of where we've been, where we are, where we want to be. Last spring, we focused really on mental health. It wasn't so much academic, but we knew what we did in the spring of last year wasn't going to be good enough for the fall. And I'll take that again. What we're doing this year, based upon now we have the benefit of time and experience, that won't be good enough for this fall. So how do we continue to evolve? The educational surveys are out there, and that's really the first place that we, I guess, before we can evolve or before we can thrive, and you've heard me say that before, we need to know what you want. We need to know what we can provide, and not everything we always want, we always can get. But the survey is the first step of letting us know where your mind happens to be. We have survey out to staff at the elementary and secondary level. We have survey out to parents and students. About 3,000 responses so far, so we're not quite there yet. We have 4,606 students in the district planned for next year, so we're about 1,600 responses short. The survey form is always attached to these notes. What we know so far, and let me click into that. What we know so far of our 3,000 responses is that 6.7% of you say you want a remote option. That is 197 students, of those 197, most voiced the reason for their request for remote is around concern about COVID-19. 178 of you have said that. But there are a lot of other reasons as well. When you dig into the data further, the data shows that we have representation from all the schools. Elementary representation is very, very strong. And that's and being able to provide elementary remote learning is different than secondary remote learning with just the nature of schedules. Like elementary, you have a homeroom teacher, or maybe you're shared, you only have two teachers or something like that. Or in high school, two different children could have markedly different schedules, even if they're taking similar types of classes. That makes it a lot different, a lot harder. So we're engaging in conversations locally with other districts, internally to our district, to see what we can provide and what that looks like. Our next step is to reach back out to these folks who have said, hey, I'm looking for a remote option, to really dig in deeper as to what does that mean. We needed to define that a little bit more for you, and we're working on that definition. Dedicated teachers, synchronous, asynchronous, attendance, timelines. I think all of those things, like timelines for submission of work, all those things you need to have a better understanding of before you can really say, hey, that's what I want. But we're working on that, and we will be reaching out to you soon for that information. Okay, a couple other announcements. We know that Special Olympics had to take a step back again this year because of just the critical nature and the frailty of some of the students. It's really not a good idea to be putting them together in those types of social situations. But there is a Special Olympics bocce extravaganza. Wow, there should be like a confetti cannon going off and and all the confetti coming down from the ceiling, or balloons or something, right? So Friday, May 14th. So next Friday at the Baldwin High School Stadium, 6 o'clock at night. Competition starts at 6:30. End time would depend on how many teams show up, choose to participate. The format is a two versus two, students pairing up with another fellow student or a staff member. It's an outdoor event. Double elimination. Courts will be set up on the field. Registration table, COVID screening table. All the precautions will be taken care of. There will be a link for the registration. Please take a look for that in the notes, and I'm sure that Mr. Jankowski and Ms. Gallagher will be pushing that out from their departments as well. It's open to any Baldwin High School staff or student, encouraging team costumes and outfits, but not required. And no teams may consist of two adults. No rigging the results here, folks. Okay, just a reminder again, today is Baldwin Invitational. It's remote for the high school, or 7 through 12, and in person for K6. But also June 9th, calendar change for June 9th as well. That the last day of school will be an in-person day. That's that Wednesday. Grades 1 through 11 will be in person, half day. I was working on the schedule this morning. Mrs. Fleming Salopek and Mrs. Huffin are reviewing that. That'll be out this afternoon. But we'll have the specific time schedule there for you. Seniors will graduate hopefully, with weather permitting, the night before, and grades permitting too, right? June 9th is the rain date for that event. Kindergarten, your last day in person will be Tuesday, June 8th. So look for that update for the schedule coming out of the curriculum or the educational department. Summer learning activities, the Discovery Camp, in-person summer program, June 30th to July 28th over at Harrison. Really, it's the extended school year program as well as ESL programming, and really a great opportunity to extend learning for kids. We continue to work through any type of credit recovery options for children. The biggest challenge that we have when we're looking at just summer school or again, credit recovery, kids are tired and staff is tired. And so sometimes is the best thing a little bit of a step away, and then do we look at some credit recovery, at least for those below the rank of senior. We can look into some things next school year and allow folks to step away and just get a little bit of time. We're working through that information as well. Okay, just a little bit on COVID updates and information. Community rates, really things seem to be leveling off. Even listening to the national folks this morning, whether we reach herd immunity, vaccine levels, if it's a combination of just outside being more accessible, opening up, weather improving, things seem to be leveling off and really taking a step back, which is good. Locally at Baldwin Borough, 23 new cases out of 91 tests, 25% positivity rate. So down in cases, about the same number of tests as last week. Positivity rate down about 10 percentage points. Whitehall, 15 cases. There were 17 last week. 43 tests. So last week there were a lot more tests. Number of cases this week are the same as last week, roughly. So that positivity rate did double, went back up to about 35%. So maybe last week was a fluke. Maybe it's more in line at 35%. Baldwin Township, 28% positivity, only 2 new cases, but only 7 new tests. In talking with the Allegheny County Health Department, a lot of their information, they're focusing on vaccines. The 13 to 18-year-old, it's still off the charts. It's the greatest area of spread. We have several cases that we're tracking. We are getting very close to potentially another shutdown at Baldwin High School. We're not there yet, but we're getting very close. The number of cases there are high. So it is that 13 to 18-year-old. As such, the clinics for vaccine are really opening up. The 16 years of age or older vaccine clinic, Mrs. Sprouse has been working on one of those, which will be at Baldwin High School next week. That information has been pushed out, will continue to be pushed out. No child can get a vaccine without parent permission. That will be absolutely necessary. There will be no exceptions. We're also looking at the options as that information comes out about 12 and older. And again, Mrs. Sprouse, who is our pandemic coordinator, will be communicating, and it has been and will be communicating more information about that. Our Allegheny County case counts have been dropping. So from last Friday, we expect it to roll through for this Friday as well. We're down 417 cases last week, from 1608 down to 1191. For incident rate per 100,000, down to 97.9. So that puts us under the threshold of 100. So if you're used to these types of Friday updates, 100 is the target, to be below that. So we're below there, and we're also below in the percent positivity. We're below 10%. We're at 6.2%, down from 6.8 of last week. So the county has moved out of substantial. We're back into moderate. We expect those numbers to continue for this week as well. And again, whether there's really change, we've been outpacing or far exceeding the recommendations at the state level of what we should be doing for our educational program. The recommendation at this point is we should still be hybrid, and we've been beyond hybrid for quite a long time. The Painter demolition project continues to progress, but folks have not been heeding my warning about staying outside the fence. So a new fence was put up that really, at this point, blocks the entire parking lot and really makes the rear parking lot inaccessible from the front, from Pleasant View Drive. But folks, that was in response to people are not listening. People are going inside the fence. We've got kids inside the fence. We've got adults, even when the fence is open up, when the gentlemen are over there working, adults that are walking their pets or exercising inside the fence. It just doesn't make sense. So you force us to take additional measures to really cordon off that entire space with a different level of security. But that's the safety is of utmost concern. Let's jump to Q&A. Let me get into some of those. Just a handful today. A lot of questions around kindergarten graduation. I don't use the term graduation. I believe kids should graduate once, and that should be at 12th grade. I believe we should recognize kids a whole bunch. So I'll use the term kindergarten recognition. There's question a lot around what's happening at McAnally. I did talk to Mrs. Wessel this morning. The kindergarten team is working on those details, looking for a remote type of ceremony. They are looking at what options might exist in person. There's just a lot of kindergarten kids, and in the building's not that large, and so dealing with visitors and all of those things make it very challenging. But that information will be coming out very soon. There are a lot of information in regard to that. There was a question about kindergarten being full day for the 21-22 school year from Diana, who's going to be a soon-to-be K mom, and the answer was yes, we will be full day for next year. There was another question about 5 days for next year, and the answer was yes. Questions around if kids are still remote, can they return to school? Again, for this year, unless there's exceptional needs or some other type of concern that exists that really create an at-risk situation, we're forced to really stay pat, so to speak. There's a question around the combination of the bus routes for Whitehall and Mackinac, and if they will return to be a shared route for next year. And they will not be, just based upon the way the schedule has been written, regardless of COVID this year, with 7th and 8th grade going to the high school, with 6th grade staying over at Harrison. We needed to rewrite that schedule based upon how many buses do we have? It's really how many drivers do we have? And when do we have them available? So just the sheer size of the Harrison building with 6th grade, the size of the Whitehall building really pulls all of our vehicles at that time. And so Mackinac will stay in that second slot, that middle slot, where they are this year. The benefit is that the Mackinac children have a dedicated bus line and they're not sharing with older children. So while in some cases that's really a benefit because you may have siblings at both schools, we always receive lots of concerns with the kindergarten and first graders on the bus with the 5th graders or the 4th graders and so forth. Interestingly enough, when Painter was intact, all the kids were on the bus, K through 5 there as well. So it's just how things have been, and when you change things, change is tough. From Aaron, a question around why is transportation to and from school not provided for Steel Center on days when students at BHS are remote, like such as today? It's a really great question. It's something that I think we can do better on. Normally in a school year, you have just really one bus schedule, and while you refine it during the year, it's really just one bus schedule. This year, we've had probably no less than a half dozen or maybe 9 different schedules. Creation of a Steel Center bus run on when kids are the days that they're not in school is one more alternative. It's one more version of that, because basically you're creating runs to go to scour the entire community, grab those kids and then take them straight to Steel Center, or bring them into a high school and then run a shuttle down to Steel Center. I want to look at that. I've not had the opportunity to do it this year, but I do want to look at that because talking to Mr. Rice down at Steel Center, in-person attendance on days such as today does drop, and that is definitely not the goal. So thank you for actually bringing that item back forward on this forum, and please know that we're going to take a look at that. Scheduling for 7th graders going into 8th. Question from Brandon. I know there's not many choices, but you've identified a few of them, basically around language or music. A lot of the 7th grade to 8th grade schedule is static. The kids take many opportunities, but they're the same opportunities except for things like language. I don't know the timeline, but I'll make sure that the timeline gets pushed out very soon. There was a question from Lisa around other kids going to the prom. I think I've answered that. Another question, actually, and thank you for putting that on there, about Baldwin inline hockey also being very, very successful. Championship 4 years in a row, undefeated this year, I believe Lisa placed in there. That is fantastic. I will check with Mr. Saris. While there are WPIL sports, there are club sports, there are other activities that kids are involved in. Let me check into that and find out a little bit more information. Question around yard signs for seniors this year. The last conversation I've had about yard signs was the fact that they were moving forward with them. I don't know the specific timeline. I believe they're in production based upon the last conversation I've had about this, but I'll get more information on that topic as well. That question, if questions aren't here early enough, I can dig into them. That question actually just came in since we've been actually at 9:03, just before we went live this morning, so I did not get a chance to get the answer to that one. So thank you for those. Finishing out today, not necessarily a quote, but just another circle back and just a shout out again to moms across the district and beyond for that matter. And thank you for all that you do for us as a son, but as a husband, seeing what my wife does for the girls. Thank you, and I hope you have just a wonderful weekend. So until we talk again next Friday, Remember, if you're sick, stay home. If you're someone's close to you being tested, stay home. 6 feet, 15 minutes, wear a face covering, and show grace to one another. Thank you.